happens when your body remembers pain, your heart is still trying to forget? What if healing isn't just possible, but holy?
Today, we're talking about reclaiming healthy sexuality after trauma, something many carry in silence. But silence doesn't have to be the end of your story. I'm Vita,
I'm Natty.
and we're here to thrive.
Welcome back to Thrive by the Rising Muse. Today's episode is both powerful and deeply necessary. We're joined by Tabitha Westbrook, a licensed trauma therapist, a certified sex addiction therapist. She's the alphabet lady. We're not going to do all the letters today. She's also the author of Body and Soul, Healed and Whole, a guide for women navigating sexuality after trauma, abuse, or coercive control.
Tabitha, who is no stranger to our show, brings not just professional expertise, but she's lived her experience. Her work centers around Christian women, offering a safe, shame free space to reclaim their bodies, their faith, and their future. So, if you've ever wondered whether healing is possible, if God still sees you in your pain, this is your episode. Welcome back, Tabitha.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be back.
Well, we're really excited to have you back. Let's start from the beginning with your personal journey. How did your story shape the heart of this book?
Yeah. So as you guys mentioned, I'm a survivor myself. I'm a survivor of both childhood sexual abuse and sexual abuse within my coercively controlling and abusive marriage. And I was part of God walking me to healing and wholeness and hope in a place I thought had no hope. And then he's given me the privilege of walking with many women through that as well, both in women's ministry and as a therapist. And that has been such an incredible gift. And I saw the need for this. I was asked to teach on it years ago at a retreat. And I just saw how the weight of it hit the women and how they needed it and how desperate women in the church are to have a real conversation about sexual harm and how to heal and to talk about all the hard things. And so I knew this was where we needed to go. You know, God really laid it on my heart, and that's how we got here.
Right.
Why do you think this topic of sexuality after trauma is so urgent right now?
I think people are realizing and reckoning with the harm that they've experienced. I think Me Too and Church Too has actually been really helpful in that, because sometimes it just takes one person to tell her story and then others go, oh my gosh, maybe it's also safe to tell mine. And so Body and Soul, Healed and Whole is to help people have the language and also have a path to healing. So it's not just an aspirational or educational book that tells you about a thing or tells you my story or the stories of my clients. It actually tells you the how to do the thing, because there's nothing more frustrating to me than hearing a sermon that's like, oh, take every thought captive, and nobody tells you how, because we don't need to know that. I feel like God is also a God of how and practicality. And so in Body and Soul, Healed and Whole, I really wanted to have the how of it all as well, and really gentle, and I don't normally like this word, but I'm going to use it because I think it's the best one, exercises to try to help you move a little bit more toward healing. And everything is invitational. I'm very invitational. So I invite you to do it, and you can always decline an invitation. You can say, no, thanks, not for me today. Maybe not for me ever. And there's no shade and no shame in that. So I really wanted this to be a very gentle approach, because women need that gentle approach. In churches, they're often told, don't talk about it. We don't need to talk about that here. Women don't talk like that, and so we have these poor sisters who have nowhere to go and no one to ask, and they're suffering in silence. And I just don't think that's acceptable. I don't think that is the heart of our Savior.
I think from the perspective of the church, and I have worked in healing ministries, I think one of the issues also is it already happened. So move on. And you can move on while you're still bleeding, because even if it's not happening now or it happened 20 years ago, the wound is there. And I don't think, especially and I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble, but I don't care, in a male dominated church environment, because it is, they don't understand.
Correct. And this is not shade to pastors. I think that they haven't been educated that they need to. And I think a lot of times they think if it's in the past, it's in the past. But our bodies keep the score. And unless we have reckoned with it and healed from it and done the healing work, it's not in the past. It's still very much part of your present story, your present way of functioning, and all of those things. And so pastors don't get any of this education in seminary of how to walk with their sisters. In fact, sometimes they get absolute junk education on sisterhood in the body of Christ, saying, oh, we got to follow the Billy Graham rule and we can't have friendship, between men and women, which is actually something I have a couple of chapters on in Body and Soul, Healed and Whole, because that is not what God says. You can't be in the same
room with a woman alone.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And God doesn't say that.
Right.
He doesn't say that. That is not in scripture. Now, do you need to be wise and careful and boundary? Of course you do. But that's true of any relationship, whether it is a same-sex friendship or an opposite-sex friendship. Right. And that is not a bad thing. That's just life. And I think pastors have in some ways been sold a bill of goods by purity culture, by the seminaries and Bible colleges they've attended, and they just don't know what they don't know. And I would like them to know, and to know that they have sisters suffering, and you need a place for this in the body where they can bring these things and say, this is what happened to me. And this is the outcome of what happened to me. Because sometimes it's not just what happened to me, it's what did I do because of what happened to me.
Right.
And so if you have a woman struggling with a lot of different things, you can tell her to stop it. But honestly, if stop it worked, I would have no job.
No, it doesn't even work with children, so no, I don't think it's gonna work at all. Let's keep on this subject of the religious spaces. You've seen through your work how abuse can show up in those spaces. How does that affect the survivor's healing? I'm thinking, you're dealing with your faith, you have a certain level of trust, and then things happen. How does that affect the survivor's healing?
Well, first of all, I'll tell you my definition of spiritual abuse, which is one that I have in the book as well. And that is, it is taking someone's good and right devotion to God and weaponizing it against them. And that is wicked. It's not the heart of the Father at all, but it makes it seem as if the abuse itself is sanctioned by God. And that just absolutely puts you in a box, and you're like, well, I don't want to go against God, so I have to do the thing, whatever the thing is. And if I don't, then I might go to hell. And like, man, I've heard people told all kinds of things like, you'll go to hell, you're not a good Christian, God is disappointed with you, all for doing things like not having sex with someone who's raping you, or refusing to watch pornography with your spouse. And we probably should have started with the trigger warning, but we didn't. So I'm going to say it now. I definitely say the hard thing out loud with my actual lips. So I want you to take care of you. You're the only you that you have. And if you are listening to this and you're like, wow, that was a lot, Tab, totally get it. Take a breath. You can always step away and come back to the podcast when you are ready. So I just want to put that invitation out there, because sometimes I think once we start something, especially if you are a faithful person and a fan of Thrive, that you are going to be like, I can't stop listening. And it's like, sweetheart, you can. And just do come back. We want you to come back. But like, take care of you. Go move your body, take some breaths, drink a beverage of your choosing, and just rest. And then come back to it when your body's ready. So I just want to say that as I say some of these hard things. Yes. And I'll say that, pastors who are foolish and unaware, they will perpetuate lies. So if a husband says, well, my wife won't have sex with me, and the pastor goes, well, you can't withhold. Haven't you seen the verse in Corinthians? It says, your body belongs to me. And then I'm always like, could we read the whole verse? That'd be amazing, And it's like, first of all, your body belongs to me. Yes. And your body belongs the other way too. Like, Jesus was equalizing the playing field. And that means that the woman can say to the husband, I don't want your body on my body. And then when people get into the parsing, I was asked this just the other day. So it's one of my favorite things to talk about. When you get into the parsing of like, well, then it says both have to agree to abstain. It's like, if you want to proof text sex on one verse, you are a terrible, terrible theologian, terrible exegeter, and terrible at hermeneutics. Absolutely terrible. Because you are supposed to interpret the whole counsel of the word of God. And if you went to seminary and you can't remember that, I have questions, my brother. So, I encourage strongly to, really look at things in their full context. And if a woman is saying, I am not comfortable with what's going on in my bedroom, the question you should ask isn't, why aren't you, but what is happening to you? What's going on? Even if it's not the present relationship, then it might be a past relationship that's showing up in her life that was abusive and destructive, and her body was deeply harmed. So if we enter in with compassion, we're going to find a different way of walking with our sisters. We're either going to help them get out of something destructive, or we're going to help them heal a past destruction.
And that's what I said, when I was talking about the male domination, it's not just church. I was in a relationship where and I have been probably was why I decided I'm single for a good while. Where I expressed from the get go, this is my past. This is what's coming on. Don't if something like if I stop you in the middle of something, don't take it personal. Got nothing to do with you. It has to do with me. Well, it's funny to me because he's like I always come with all my disclaimers ahead. But once you get into the relationship, they think that was just jokes or it was not that bad or I don't know. And
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten but that's not me get over it. I'm the different person get over it. That's not the way it works. I wish I had a switch where I can pull it out, like a chip and get it off. But that was my life experience. I wish I could take it away. I wish I could just open it and pull it out. But that's not the way it works. So it's hard. Just the fact that you have to talk to someone who you're going to be intimate with. But on top of that, you can get ridiculed or be made like uncomfortable because now you're like less or you're not pleasing me or all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard.
It is. It is. I had childhood trauma, and I didn't start off dating my husband. We were best friends. So, being best friends, I shared my trauma with him. So, he knew what I had gone through. And now looking back, this was all orchestrated by God because you can't get any husband who's going to come in and help you unpack this trauma.
I didn't
Okay.
get it.
Mm-hmm.
That
Right?
was my problem. I didn't get one.
But the blessing that I got, he started off being my best friend. He knew the good, the bad, and the ugly about me. So when we became husband and wife, he knew what was going on. And he was very gentle, okay? Very gentle. And we could talk about things and stuff. And that's why I say one Valentine's, I wrote him and told him, thank you for taking me out of my darkness and bringing me into the light. Because it takes a compassionate person. It takes a person who's strong, but also sensitive. So I was blessed in that area and been married going on 41 years in a couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
He gets on my nerves. He drives me crazy, and stuff. Now he's retired, so I'm running rings around him and his recliner and his big TV. But I thank God that he didn't allow me to get into a relationship where I had to fight like my mother did.
Mm-hmm.
Trauma. He brought me out of all that. It took a lot of counseling, therapy, prayer, okay, and working through the heart thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying this because whoever is listening to this, you need to be able to have hope and know you can come out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't forget, I haven't forgotten anything, but it doesn't affect me like it used to. My stomach doesn't hurt when I think about it, and I'm able to share to let people know he brought me out.
Mm-hmm.
And the same God that brought me out, he can bring you out. So there is hope.
Absolutely.
I also want to say, look, about the men, we talked about this on other shows. There are some men that do not know anything in the Bible except wives, submit yourself to your own husband. That's the only scripture. You don't know Genesis 1:1 is in the beginning God created the heaven and earth. Okay?
But they know that one.
You don't know Revelation where it ends with amen. And they know Jesus wept and wives, submit yourself to your own husband. But they missed the part where it says, submit yourselves one to another. And they definitely missed the part where it says, he who loves his wife loves himself. Okay? See? And after all, no one ever hated their own body, but they feed and care for their body just like Christ does. But
Yes.
that's it right
And
there.
and those are, again, that's good hermeneutics, right? Looking at the whole counsel of the word of God. What does it say across the board? And I think I love that you talked about friendship because that really is the foundation. And that is why I spent so much time talking about how to know if a friendship is healthy, how to enter into a healthy friendship. Because if you are out there bleeding into the water of life, what are you going to attract?
Sharks.
Sharks. You're going to attract sharks, and you're going to be
Mhm.
like, something's chewing on my foot, you know? And I don't want folks to be surprised by that. I want them to do the healing work and then to know, how do you know who a good man is? First as a friend, and then potentially romantic partners. Look, if they're married to somebody else, they are not your person,
No,
right? And even if
ma'am.
they say it's a terrible relationship and she's crazy, look now, when they start off with she's crazy, I have questions. Maybe she is, but also like do your work, get divorced, do the thing, and
Mhm.
then start dating. Don't date while you're married. That's called adultery.
Mm,
It's very bad.
no,
Um, you know,
please don't.
and I think that, women who've been hurt, especially when you've been hurt in childhood and all the way up, we want someone to love us. We are looking to be loved. And
Mhm.
we're trying to get a very, very important need met, but
Mhm.
it can't be met in a way that is destructive to you. That doesn't
Right.
help you out. So I always encourage women to just, really like, what's the character of this individual? They might be well spoken. They might be super cute. They might seem to have it all together, but like watch them over time. What
Mhm.
happens when you disagree? What happens, are they a predator or a brother? My good brothers, and I tell the story in Body and Soul and Healed and Whole, they are such good men. And there is a particular man that I've been friends with now for 15 years. And he and I have been nothing but friends. I actually knew him before his wife. Because we were both single at the same time. He was a pastor, but never my pastor. And we have been very close. We have an intimate friendship because he knows stuff about me. I know stuff about him. And we have deep conversations. He's one of my favorite theology geeks to talk with. And I love it so much. But we're just friends because he's my brother. And that's all we've ever been. That's all I've ever seen him as. That's all he's ever seen me as. And there's never been a risk. His wife does not fear me. In fact, we love
Mm-hmm.
each other very much. I love his wife. She's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But she doesn't fear me because I'm not a threat, because I know we're friends and I don't have any other feelings for him. And I talk about in the book, like, if you do end up with feelings, how do you deal with them? If the person is married, you deal with them because they are not feelings you need to keep. And you
Right.
don't have to act on them. You can acknowledge there's desire here. There is a hope for a relationship. This person's not the right person for that because they're in a marriage, but I can acknowledge and bless that I have desire and hope. And for survivors, the words desire and hope are like swear words sometimes. And I totally get that because it feels risky. If I
Mm-hmm.
want this, is it even possible to get?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is maybe it is, and maybe it isn't. And that's disappointing for sure. And you can grieve and lament all of those things if it's not what the Lord has in the cards, but it is okay to feel it. And if you
Mm-hmm.
can't get comfortable feeling that tension, then that's also going to get in the way of your healing, because you're going to
Mm-hmm.
try to do an end around and you're going to try to fit things into those spaces that are not going to serve you well.
Absolutely. I heard once at a singles event, you have to date somebody at least once a whole year so that you can see if they act different in the summer than the winter, so
Mm-hmm.
that you can see them in the holidays. If they only call you at night, what's going on, or if they only call you during the day, what's
Mm-hmm.
going on. If they, how they act during the holidays, do they introduce you to friends, all kinds of stuff before you actually start, more serious relationship, because, love at first sight is good for the books,
Right. You cannot
not
live
for
off of love and
reality.
crackers. You just can't.
Right.
And and of course you're going to hear the stories from the like 2% of people that like met,
Hmm.
married in like 6 weeks and everything's great and it's a really good relationship. Those are not the normal.
Right.
You have to build friendship. If we look at just research on couples, and John and Julie Gottman have done like 40 years of research on a gajillion couples. I think the
Hmm.
actual number is like tens of thousands, but they see that the basis of a healthy relationship is friendship first.
Hmm.
And if you are not friends first, then your relationship is not going to be healthy.
Hmm.
And you have to start there. So these relationships where it is all about physical affection and intercourse, those are not going to be sustainable. One of my friends said it the very best way ever, and I love it so much. I told her I was going to repeat it for all of time. And so here I am doing that. But she said her mother's wedding advice to her was, be good friends because one day you will both be sexless turtles. And I was like, yes, because things don't always work the same when we get older, right? Like things don't go up or down, or things happen, right?
Yeah.
And women body parts, when we hit menopause, I'm just gonna say it, we have dry vaginas. It takes a long time to have an orgasm, right? Our interests may not be the same. Our spouse's interest may become reduced because that happens when we age. And if that is the sum total of your relationship or your intimacy, it's not going to be sustainable.
Yeah.
because stuff happens. I mean, what about cancer and illness and all these things, right? And so I think the church erroneously has also prioritized intercourse as the main way of physical connection. And it's not. You can cuddle. There's all kinds of touch you can do. There's all kinds of other things that are not just intercourse. And there's all kinds of other relational intimacy that needs to take place in addition. And so when you have that close relationship, if for some reason intercourse is no longer possible, you're going to figure out ways together to stay physically connected in ways that work for both of you. And it's going to be good. Now, will there be disappointment if you can't have intercourse? Of course there will. And there's disappointment for women when we can't have intercourse, because I don't know if y'all know this, but sex and orgasms can be very fun. They're a good time. They feel good. They're pleasurable. And God made our bodies this way.
Yes.
What a beautiful God, that it could have been like boring.
I'm fine.
But you know what? Even for us single ladies, right? We don't stop being sexual beings. Now, how we manage desire and feelings and desire and all the urges and whatever, that's, can be a whole different conversation.
Totally.
Right. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't, rejoice in the goodness that God gives. Right. And yes, when we don't have desire met, there is going to be grief. Absolutely. And I'm not minimizing that, because I know that there are women out there that strongly desire a wonderful partner, and that is not their story right now and may not be their story ever. So I don't want to minimize that pain at all. But I do want to say that for those who are in relationship, prioritize friendship first, and good things will come from that.
Well, and even while you're in a relationship, the friendship gets you to a better sex life. Because you get to know each other, you share things. I mean, there's nothing sexier than a man doing dishes and,
Right.
Vacuum.
Exactly.
So if you're just thinking about the bed, that's not going to be, like you said, sustainable relationship, because that's 3 to 5 minutes. The rest of the day, what are you going to do with it? And you got to still live with that person, share the rest of your life. So it's not just about that.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely. Making me think about things, Tabitha. You're a therapist with a strong spiritual lens. So how has working with trauma survivors shaped your own faith?
I have seen God show up in the coolest ways. I think there's always a question of, where are you, Lord, for survivors? Because if we know he can deliver us from it, why didn't he? And I always think about what Beth Moore said a million years ago. I believe it's in the Daniel study, where it says God will deliver you from it, through it, or to it. And when it's from it, we go around it. When it's through it, we have to go through it. Right. The only way out is through sometimes. And when he delivers us to it, that means he took us home. And so we die. And, I don't know how else to say that, but he is so gentle and kind no matter how he's walking with us in it. And I think that it is very hard to go, how can God love me and let this happen? And man, sin is a mess. It really just messes up the world in big ways. But when I see God show up in the healing and really say, no, daughter, I was with you and I didn't leave you or forsake you. And let me show you where I was and how I helped you persevere in a situation of this broken world. Like, it is beautiful. And it just makes me go, man, Jesus, you're amazing. I refer to him as sneaky Jesus in body and soul, healed and whole, and frankly, just about everywhere else. And it's not because he's sneaky to himself, because he knows what he's doing. I just never know what he's doing. And so I'm like, sneaky Jesus, every time he shows up and does amazing things, because he really is present. And that just gives me more and more confidence to walk. What I tell folks is, I'll get in the valley of the shadow of death with you, but we are not making camp. We go out the other side.
Yeah. As you, walk through your own walk with faith and through your work, what is the biggest misconception that you've heard within the faith community about abuse?
Well, that it doesn't happen. Surely it's not happening here.
Okay,
it's
there
not
you
that
go.
prevalent, all the things. And it can't possibly involve sexual abuse, because, once you're married, you can't be raped, which is also not true. All 50 states have marital rape laws. All of them. That is 50 states and probably the District of Columbia, but I haven't looked. And I think that that's a really important thing to realize, is that we still have bodily autonomy as a married woman if we're in a relationship. And I know in the state of North Carolina, this was a newer law that was passed a couple of years ago, I believe now, but they say that you can even say no in the middle and it needs to stop right then, or it's rape. And I really think that that's important, because I think in the church that we often hear really distorted things about consent. And consent is an enthusiastic yes. And I talk about this in Body and Soul, Healed and Whole as well. It is enthusiastic yes. There is no in between. If it's not enthusiastic yes, the answer was no. And even if you had an orgasm, even if you assented because, oh, come on, honey, just a little bit, just come on, it'll be quick. You just have to lay there, which who wants to do that? It's like, that does not sound fun to anyone, to me at all. Like, I just need this thing. And it's like, dude, you're treating your wife like a blow up doll. What are you doing? And it's just so wrong. And so I think the church really could comment on consent in a different way, in the way that Jesus does, where he is not coercive. He is not an oppressor. He lets people have their choices and he honors them. And honestly, like, I wouldn't want to have sex with somebody that was trying to force me into it or coerce me into it or asking me to do things in the bedroom that did not go with my value system at all. The number of things that women get asked to do is pretty epic and real wicked, like, up to and including like, trafficking and, where they're bringing friends to the party. And that is really wrong and so outside of the heart of God. And so I think that churches, they really need to understand how prevalent it is. And they need to begin to like speak about it from the pulpit and actively speak against it. It needs to look a lot more like the way Jesus like lives.
And for a person who already has sexual trauma and something happened in the middle, and you say, stop, stop. If they don't understand what your past is about, they're not going to take that seriously.
Nope.
That's why being a friend, a lot of relationships begin with sex. Instead of beginning with, let me learn about you. You learn about me. What are your likes, your dislikes? How do you feel about this? Do you know the one thing that they say that very few couples talk about? Money. True. And when you're in the church, very few couples talk about when they're engaged. You need to learn a person before you welcome them in totally.
Well, and people in relationships don't really talk about sex. They just go for it. They don't talk about what do you like, what you don't like. Can I get to learn? Even sometimes they don't get the opportunity to get to learn each other's bodies. They just go for the actual intercourse part and let's go with it. I remember when I got married and talking about the church, we went to a retreat for 3 days as a premarital class. And we talked more about how we were going to agree on who was going to set up the alarm clock than we did about sex. We had a whole exercise about who's going to get up and do the breakfast, who's going to put the alarm clock, who's going to do the dishes, all that fun stuff. And for the sex was one sentence. It was like anything that both of you agree, it's okay behind closed doors. End of the conversation. Let's go to the next topic. Yeah.
And that's such a dangerous thing, right? Because we're not dealing then with the reality of what people bring into relationships anyway. And if sex is like, oh, anything that goes on behind closed doors that you agree, well, you can coerce someone into agreement. And then you're, essentially given carte blanche to somebody who's destructive to do terrible things and to force their spouse to agree. Right. Well, I didn't want to agree, but I was told I had to submit. And so I did. And now, I know there are videos of me out there. I hear this all the time. Videos and pictures I don't consent to. I don't know what has been done with them, and the number of women that have found themselves on, black market sites basically is pretty high. And so when we say that that's all the conversation we're going to have about sex in the church, that's really dangerous.
Right.
And like, how are you going to be good friends and how are we going to work through arguments? And I mean, there's value in who's going to set the alarm clock and breakfast stuff and all that. Like it's not like it's not valuable. It's just not primary. And there are other things that are much better primary topics for, a couple who is about to, bring all their stuff together and stick it in a house. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like we're going to bring all of our goods and services and trauma with us. And if we don't have real conversations about that, it is a gift in premarital counseling to tell somebody don't do it. And I know there may be deposits made and venues and invitations, but I promise you it is better to walk away and to lose deposits if you have to. And look, I'm not taking that lightly, but then to spend the rest of your life in a marriage that is destructive.
So you think people should go through premarital counseling for a while before even setting up the date? That would be wiser.
I think so. I've always thought it would be such a great idea. although I've heard it from therapists that maybe like people don't really like take advantage, although they should, of like going to bridal shows, where you can like, there's your photographer and your flower vendor and your therapist, and like, why aren't we giving that as a gift?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to give you really solid premarital counseling that isn't just reading the Song of Solomon, and God bless, I've heard that more than a few times. And, and send you to somebody who actually like has half clue and does real trauma, real good premarital counseling. And then we're going to give you 10 sessions with that counselor or any counselor. Just, I mean, like, if you're like, well, what if they don't like that counselor? Oh, fine. Right. But like, maybe you give them a gift certificate that says, hey, when you encounter something, you don't have to tell me what it is, but you can cash it in at this point in time, and it'll be 10 sessions to any therapist that you have fit with, that you guys like, and you can go and do that. And what a much better gift than plates.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I like a good plate, not gonna lie. China's fun. And I definitely think you should also give them a KitchenAid. But if we give them some really good solid counseling, we're really setting them up better. And then it's still a lot cheaper than a divorce attorney. And also you can buy your own KitchenAid.
Yes, exactly.
When I was doing marriage counseling, I think it was like 12 chapters, and the last chapter was sex. Okay? They had to go through all these other things, and the last chapter was
So you had 12 classes?
Yeah.
That's good. Like I said, we had 3 days condensed in there.
Sex can wait, all right? We need to work out these other 11 chapters of things, okay? Because the majority of the time, most people, they connect sexual, but it's just a physical connection. It's not emotional. It's not we know each other. It's physical. And especially a woman that has trauma.
Absolutely.
I bet it did.
And then women with trauma is already hard to trust.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Because if someone wants to be with you bad enough, predators.
Yes.
Predators prey on women with trauma.
Yes, they do.
Women with low or no self-esteem. That's their prey.
Yeah.
That's their prey. You look like you don't feel good about your body. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to tell you everything that I think.
Love bombing.
You need to hear.
Yep. Love bombing.
Yep. And they know, right? They're crafty in how they present. And that is why, like, following good, dating hygiene, if you will, of what happens when you disagree, all of those things, giving it time, right? Because anybody can do anything for a short period of time, but over time, you'll see their true character. Understanding what they believe about sex, what they believe about frequency, all of those things can give you clues into whether or not this is going to be a safe individual. And also doing your work to know your own worth and value, right? That is probably the biggest safety mechanism, is to know, no, I'm worthy of so much more, and the willingness to walk away if that's not being demonstrated. And like, I'm not talking about being entitled. I don't think that's wise. But I'm talking about saying I deserve to be treated as an image bearer of the living God because I am one. And I expect you to treat me as such. If you can't treat me as a daughter of a king, my brother, you do not need to get up in this palace. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you.
Right. And so I think that that's just such an important thing. And when you desire love, I understand why it is tough, because you are like, but I just want to be loved. But you've got to start with yourself. And this is another thing I talk about in Body and Soul Healed and Whole. You got to start with you, right? Until you start working on your relationship with you and your relationship with God, a relationship with another human being isn't going to be as good as it could be, and you do put yourself at risk in that space.
Jesus wants us to love and be loved.
Yes.
But that's not love.
That's not love. Not to abuse and disguise it or dress it up as love. When you start dreading intimacy, you definitely need to talk to somebody. And that's what I had to do. You got to talk it out. Cry it out. Snot it out.
Yep.
All of the above.
Well, yeah. Well, when we're talking about healing, one of the things you say is that it's not emotional. It's social, spiritual, and physical. How do we begin reconnecting with our bodies after trauma?
Yeah. Well, first of all, sexual trauma really takes you out of your body, right? Because it doesn't feel safe to be in your body. A lot of times we use dissociation or checking out to be a protective mechanism. And it's a beautiful thing, right? It can serve a good purpose, but it's not where we want to stay.
Right.
And because we really do heal from the bottom up, from the back of the brain to the front of the brain. So the feelies to the thinkies, then we really have to reckon with our bodies. And to get back into our bodies is very terrifying at times. We especially here in Western society, our thinky parts because they feel safer. They don't come with sensations. They don't come with the emotions.
Right.
But if we don't like really do that, we are missing out on full healing from the Lord because our bodies kept the score and our bodies tell us really important things about what's going on for us, right? So if I'm having a day where my body just really hurts and it's really hard, and I can go, man, what's going on? Maybe I overdid it in an area the day before, or a couple days before, because it's the day after that's the worst. Or you are holding something and maybe your body's just really tense that you need to let go of and relax into, or there's something that you need to process. I've said a number of times in my own story, I don't know what it is yet, but I feel it.
Mm-hmm.
I can feel something's off. I can feel something's in there that needs to be worked through. And then eventually it makes its way up to my brain where I'm like, oh, it's this thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if we are really paying attention to our bodies, we're going to start to notice those things. We're going to start to notice when I don't feel safe when I'm around someone. I tell this story in the book as well, where I am with a friend and it doesn't feel good to be hugged by this person. And so I just didn't. I moved my body. Now I didn't confront it and I didn't say anything at the time. I just moved where I was standing. And they honored my movement and didn't come closer. And if they had, there would have been a much more stringent boundary, like, hey, I don't want you to touch me. And if they tried again, then it might not have gone well for them. But if I hadn't paid attention, I would have kept myself in an uncomfortable situation. And we don't have to do that. And our bodies matter, right? Like God came in a body. He resurrected in a body. Yes. We are going to see the scars in his glorified body. And our bodies matter. We can't just be like, I don't need that. We're good. Unless you don't want to actually walk places, or you're listening to this and you're a ghost, which I have questions if that's the case. But, or if you think you're a ghost, you probably also have some delusions and we should talk about that. But, we all have bodies and we need to care well for them. And again, that's not like the Instagram version of care well.
Right.
That is just honoring the physical temple that the Lord has given us and going yeah, my body has seen some things and she needs a little love.
As you're talking, I'm thinking about something that as parents we do wrong is we tell little kids to hug people.
Yeah, I know.
And because they're family or whatever. And they need to learn that if they don't want to hug somebody, there's some boundaries. I don't care if the person is a family, I don't care if it's a parent. If they don't want to hug, they don't want to hug. And I think sometimes we miss in that scenario because I'm thinking for me as a parent, but at the same thing I'm thinking me as a child when my mom used to make me go to the house of my abuser. And I didn't want to go. But he's like your second father. You need to go. And I wasn't ready to disclose. And she didn't know that was re-traumatizing. But we do that with children. Hug so and so. He's your uncle. He's your niece. He's your whatever. With little kids, and we're training them that they have to because they're told to, not because they want to. Instead of letting them know that they too can say no. And set that boundary. So I don't know why, but I just, as you were talking, it made me think of that.
Yes.
Because we do make that mistake with kids.
Absolutely. And the majority of sexual assault happens at the hands of someone we know. It is not stranger danger. Now, is that important? Absolutely. But that's not who is far and away perpetrating sexual assault and sexual abuse. It is someone known to the victim.
Yeah.
And so when we give our children bodily autonomy, you don't have to hug that person. Or Dr. Camden Morgante says this in her book on purity culture. At the very end, she has some appendices about how to talk to your kids about sex, which is fantastic. I highly recommend that book. She tells the story of her dad tickling her daughter and how she said, hey, in our house, we don't do that when they say stop. Because the daughter had said stop and dad kept going. And she said, hey, we don't do that. And he stopped immediately at that point and honored that boundary. And I think that is important because then that gives her daughter a no when she needs a no. And no is a complete sentence. You don't need to add any words to it. No, thank you if you really want to be polite, but the answer is no. And I think that when we give kids that, even if it's the safest grandmama in the world, who just wants the snuggles, when we give kids the ability to say no to that, then the snuggles with grandma are going to be that much richer, right?
Yes, I agree.
I prayed for a daughter. I even saw my daughter in a dream the night that I went into labor. And the reason why I prayed for a daughter is because I wanted her to have a better life, a better safe space. Mom and dad who love you in a healthy way. And I got my daughter. And I went through therapy for years and years because I wanted to be able to let her know that you can come to me. I'm safe. You come to me and tell me anything. I've even asked her questions. She'll tell you. I've asked hard questions, questions that I didn't want to know the answer to. Jesus, if I ask this question, what they say this, what are you going to do? But I had to because of what I went through. I needed her to know that if something happens to you that you don't like, I'm right here. I'm right here. You can come to me.
Yeah.
And that's why I prayed to have a daughter to give her a better life, a life without fear. Okay.
Yeah.
She's fearless. You got your way.
She is. I did my job.
That's awesome. I love that.
Oh, girl is fearless.
That's wonderful.
Yes,
and I think that's such a gift, you know, I mean, and I think that's another thing where the church can just lean in. You know, we want men and women that honor each other as brothers and sisters and as image bearers of the living God. And my contention is that we need to start educating about healthy sex, healthy relationships, you know, by middle school at the latest. Because the very first time kids look at porn is around 8. And so if you're not like having conversations about bodies and desire and curiosity and all of the things, then you're missing out, and the world is going to educate your kids if you don't. Yes. And again, that's not the purity culture, like don't do it till you're married. That is not your sex talk, people. Oh my word, please don't do that to your children, because you know that may be a beautiful value, but it's not enough. Right. So it's just not sufficient. And the world is going to say, but this is fun. Look how cool it is. Right. It's glamorized and glorified and in every like hamburger ad and everything. But when we say like, here's God's rhythm and here's how it's beautiful. And here's how it's protective of you and your partner. Here's how you guys honor each other. And here's how it makes for better relationships. Right. Not that I mean, and look, man, sex is hard sometimes. It's not always going to go perfectly. It absolutely never looks like the movies, because we all know that is fake. You know, and they don't show all of the nasty after, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, put down a towel. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I know that is very direct, but like, you know, they don't show that in the movie. It's all romance, and the sheets are still clean. And you're like, I don't know how that happened for you.
And the hair is flowing like
right. My makeup has
breeze.
Never survived it. So like, I just, and my hair is curly. It's just not going to look like this after sex. It's just not. And that's okay. It's not a bad thing. But, you know, if we're saying to kiddos, like, there's something so much more than just the physical. There's something so much more when we get into the connection, the relationship, the goodness that God has in it. And the physical is actually the bonus. Yeah. The relational intimacy makes the physical more fun and more enjoyable and better, you know, and it's still not going to go perfect every time. And of course you feel desire. And I think that that's a scary thing sometimes for parents to say, is that of course you feel desire, because, you know, like, well, then if they say that, then they're going to just go do it. And you can say, well, let's talk about why we would wait to fulfill that desire and why we would look at it this way. But enjoying that they have it instead of vilifying it is such an important place.
Well, like I said, for me as a parent, I want to be answering those questions. And I know I say off the wall things, and kid goes like, oh, I'd rather that you think I'm crazy, but come to me. Because my sexual education was a book that I was handed, that it said, what are you going to go through between 9 and 12? And they handed me this book, and they didn't even tell me, come back if you have questions. He's like, here's the book, good luck. And by the time I got the book, it was kind of late because I had already been molested. But so yeah, it was crazy. And I think I believe that everybody should wait until they got married. Like I said, that's a beautiful thing. But I don't think children should be living in ignorance. I have talked to your grandchild, and she goes, because I was like, he confessed that he's okay. So do you have condoms with you? And she goes, oh, yeah. Do you have? Because guess what? God can forgive you fornication, but if you die of an STD, you're not gonna have a chance. So let's be real. And I can tell you why you shouldn't be doing this and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not gonna be with you, and I'm not gonna put a chastity belt on you. So since I can't do that, I know you wish you could. I'm
actually
asking you.
One of the things in the book I wrote about is that is really actually a myth. They weren't really a thing. So keep going.
I always wonder how people pee with chastity belts.
Exactly, they weren't a thing.
What? It's true. I always wondered. I was like, did you have that question? I'm sorry.
Mhm.
But yeah, I asked them, do you have condoms? I know you shouldn't be doing this. You know, I had a friend who, because of trauma, she tended to be promiscuous.
Mhm.
And I always told her, we can raise a baby, we can raise an STD. So are you protecting yourself? I'm not promoting her doing it because I don't want her to do what she's doing. But since
Right.
I can give her as much counsel as I can, but since I can't stop you, can I at least make sure you're alive so that you have a chance to change your life at some point, or or make whatever decisions. I want to talk to you, and then if you get into a trouble, you won't have anybody to talk to. No, come talk to me. That's fine.
Right.
We can have the conversation.
Absolutely. And I think that when we offer information about, protected sex and things like that, protected intercourse, we may have some people listening who are clutching pearls and going, I
Who's
mean,
the
I
first
could
one we
never.
know?
Right.
Right.
And I get it, but
Mhm.
I think I would rather say, like, this isn't the best for you. It would be ideal if you waited. If you choose not to wait, first of all, God will still love you. Okay.
Mhm.
First and foremost,
Mhm.
you're not going to be damaged goods. If
Mhm.
you were trying to wait and the other person took advantage of you,
Mhm.
again, not damaged goods, not your fault.
Mhm.
And if you do make this choice, here are the ways to be safe if you do. And I'd
Exactly.
rather you didn't, but I'd rather you also know. And also we need to talk about oral sex, anal sex, all the things that people think aren't sex
Mhm.
that are 100%, right? Because if someone has an STI and you have oral sex with them, you can end up with it, or anal
Mhm.
sex. There are just some holes people that are exit only. I'll just tell you that.
Yeah.
And, there can be disease and things like that. So
Mhm.
I'd rather tell you about safety
Yes.
and then give you information on the heart of God and why you might want to wait, and
Exactly.
also honoring the desire, right? Because when we
Right.
say you shouldn't feel anything, and this is what purity culture told people,
Yeah.
is you turn it off until the marriage bed, and then you're supposed to turn the
Where is
switch
that
on.
button?
Right. And that's so, and kids were growing up going, but I have these feelings.
Right.
And then they feel dirty because they have them and they don't know
Mhm.
what to do with them, or they end up in a situation where they go farther than they wanted.
Right.
And we haven't given them tools. And so I think robust sex education is not a pathway to just promiscuity. I think it's
Right.
wisdom. And I think that we can, as parents, enter into that again, with good information all the way around.
Mhm.
And then I really would rather you wait. I think
Mhm.
that's God's best for you, and if you don't, like, don't freak out. Like, let's talk
Mhm.
about it and really, like, talk about how to make sure you're staying safe in that
Mhm.
and keep continuing the conversations, right? Sex education in the home is not like a one and done.
No,
It's not
that's
like,
an
and I told
ongoing
you,
thing.
don't ever ask again.
Right. Right. No, it's an ongoing thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think it's so many things like with the same kid. Sometimes we're riding in the car and he's talking to his friends, and I'm going like, you don't talk like that about a girl. And
Hmm.
they were having a conversation about, oh, I cheated on her and I lied to her. So what do I do now? Well, you messed up. And he was not
Right.
him; it was his friend on the phone. You messed up. So no, you're not gonna go and bring her a toy or a stuffed animal for her to forgive you. If you cheated it's because you didn't respect her enough. So
Hmm.
no, don't do that. And I
Right.
have these conversations with them. I'm a girl, so I'm telling them from the girl perspective. I'm telling you, you're doing it
Mhm.
wrong, and this is what she thought, and this is how she felt. And I've never been the no,
Hmm.
no. I'm the a crazy aunt that they can come talk to about anything because I tell her like it is. Do I tell them, no, don't mistreat other kids, don't mistreat those girls, don't abuse them, blah, blah,
Hmm.
blah. And like I said to this one, I don't want you out there. I don't want you doing this. But if you are, do you have what you need?
Hmm.
Because like I said, I can tie you to the bottom of the bed. So you used to be. So, at least stay protected until you can mature enough to make different decisions.
Right.
That's all we can do. And I don't think that's promoting. I don't think it's promoting.
No.
Maybe I'm
And
wrong.
I think
But
we can be honest too. I mean, there's a lot of data about hookup culture and how that is
mhm,
actually really emotionally harmful. A lot of times you
mhm,
have to be drunk in order to do it, or
yep,
high. You have to be under some sort of influence. And I think,
mhm.
like, having these conversations with our kids just really blatantly and, like, and again, age appropriately. You don't say this to a
Oh, no, no,
6-year-old,
no.
for
I
heaven's
wouldn't
sake,
say that to the 4 year old.
but, like, as kids get older, having these appropriate conversations of like, hey,
Right.
let's talk about this. And let's talk
Right.
about, again, of course you want to, duh.
Huh?
Like, yeah, like that's normal. That's called
Uh-huh.
growing up and hormones and all the things, right?
Right.
And that's a beautiful thing. And also, like, let's make sure, we talk about the boundaries that are best for us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
There are women who have had sexual trauma and their mindset is, I can't be without a relationship. I
Mm-hmm.
have to have
Yeah.
somebody. You understand? I
Absolutely.
cannot be by myself. I go from one bad relationship to the next because my high is that I can say I'm in a relationship.
Right.
Or I'm in control, because that's the other thing. When you've been through that type of situation, you feel so out of control because something was taken out of you that
Yeah.
they may think, okay, I'm having this relationship, I'm in control. When it's not
Mhm.
even true, but that's the feeling.
Right.
And then you
Or,
have the low self esteem.
yeah.
An example, you're dating someone, okay? Your car breaks down. They have two cars, but they're not volunteering one. You see what
Hmm.
I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But you're still coming and giving the benefits. You see what I'm
Right.
saying? Because somehow in your mind you think I can change.
Right.
And
We cannot
this
change people.
is gonna change. It's not.
No.
It's not. When you're in a relationship and, washing machine break, lights get turned out, whatever, and that person does not try to step up, that's not a good relationship. And what I'm
No.
talking about is the decisions that we make and the abuse that we allow to come on us just to say, I'm in a relationship.
Right. It comes down to worth and value. And a lot of times what I see when you've been harmed, what I'm seeing, it's called an enactment. And I also talk about this in Body and Soul Healed and Whole, where we go and we're trying to fix the thing that wasn't good by doing the thing again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's subconscious and it doesn't play out exactly the same every time, but we enter into it, A, because we're trying to fix what was broken, or B, because it's what we know. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sometimes the devil is better than the devil that you don't in our minds, even though that's not really a true statement. Right.
Right.
So folks end up doing that and really not, again, they're not finding that peace because they're not finding someone peaceful. And that makes it, but when you look at it again, what happened? Why? Tell me, what makes this make sense? Then you can start disentangling that and helping people look at it in a different way. And do their own healing work so that they don't continually go into those spaces over and over. And we see that with promiscuity, right? And sometimes it's, I played by the rules and got played by the rules. So now I'm going to go do this other thing over here. And so now I'm going to become promiscuous because I did wait till marriage and then my marriage was terrible. And so now I'm just going to go get mine, or I want to be in control because I didn't get to be control in the bedroom. And so now I'm going to go into some, different spaces with that. And when we look at it, it's like, man, all of these are just things trying to deal with the trauma. And it's never going to truly satisfy you because it's just not possible.
Right.
But what I can do in that space then is I can help you walk through it and disentangle it. Also, women tend to find things get attached to their arousal template. An arousal template is the stuff that turns you on. It's a constellation of things that arouse you for sexual things. We have arousal templates for a lot of different things. But in the sexual arena, it's all the things that come together in your body, in your environment that make you desire sex. And when you have been forced into watching pornography, creating pornography, any of those types of things, or there's been violence in your sexual history from your spouse and you had orgasms, because what fires together wires together, then you have woven into your arousal template violence. And so you may find, I need it rough, in order for it to seem pleasurable. Or I want someone to physically harm me in order to have an orgasm. And so those are questions where I go, hey, like, let's look at your sexual history and start looking at that arousal template and how it was built so that we can see what do you want to keep and what don't you want to keep, because you can disentangle those things. And these are also things that people don't yet, hopefully this book will help, have voice for in the church, because how do you walk up to somebody and go, yeah, like, hi, whips and chains excite me. Can we have a conversation about that? But we need to be able to say, I don't know what to do with this.
Right.
And I need to be able to walk into a place and have that. So I also hope this will be a resource for, ministry leaders to take and go, like, maybe I'm not great with these words, but I've got a book and we can go through it together.
Talking about the book, what do you hope your readers come out and get out of this book?
For those who've been harmed, I hope they find healing. I hope that they see the face of God. I hope it feels invitational to them because I worked really hard for that. And I hope that it walks them toward healing in a way that, like, oh gosh, man, thank God somebody finally said the thing, you know? And for ministry leaders, I hope they pick it up and get a tool from it. If people look at the endorsements, and you can see those on Amazon, you'll notice it's men and women that have endorsed it. And that was very purposeful because I wanted men to read the book. Even though it is written to women, I wanted men to read the book and use it in their congregations to help their sisters, heal. If you're a shepherd, then that's your whole congregation. You can't just concentrate on the dudes. You know, you got to also invite the women into that. And I really hope that it serves that purpose as well.
Because 90% of church is women.
I don't know if that's that high, but it is
Maybe
a higher
not
percentage.
that high. It used to be very, very high. But there is a higher number of women than men in the church. Okay?
Yes.
And pastors, they do have to address the hurt.
Well, and our pastor was talking about a statistic the other day that not only women are the most, but the men that come not necessarily are coming to try to find Jesus.
Right.
Sometimes they're just coming to find a relationship with a good woman, and they're not to find Jesus.
It's like, there's a lot of women in church.
Right.
Let's go there.
Right.
So, right.
So that's something to take into consideration.
Miss Tabitha, before we wrap up, are there any upcoming projects that you want to share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Our practice, my therapy practice, is going to have a bunch of groups coming up starting this summer. So we have one that is called Restore, and it is to help you restore your relationship with God when spiritual abuse has happened and you're like, I don't even know this dude right now. I don't know what to do with any of God at all. We want to help you walk into that in a gentle way. We also have a women's trauma group for women who have been traumatized in any capacity, not just in the sexual arena, but need some hope and healing. I am going to run a group about this book. So I'll do the deep dive and we'll walk through it chapter by chapter together. And there'll be reflection questions and some study tools to help you kind of dive into that a little bit better and come to a deeper sense of healing. We also are going to have a group called Anchored. And this is for parents, Christian parents who have kids. I refer to them as spicy. So kids with behavioral struggles, mental health issues, things like that. There's not a lot of places for parents to be able to talk through this and get support. A lot of times I think parents kind of hide at church and because they're embarrassed and they think, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. And it happens, right? Treatment centers having to figure out how to send your kid to treatment. I've walked with so many parents through that, and like the church needs to be able to do that as well. So we're going to have a group for faith-based parents for kids who've been in those situations so that you just have support and care and kindness. And so those are some of the things that we have coming up in this space to just help people. And most of these will be online, so you can be anywhere on earth that has an internet connection.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. Are these going to be face-to-face or online? Oh, good.
Yep. Online.
So can you
Zoom.
give us your website so that people can find you?
Yep. So they can go to thejourneyandtheprocess.com and spell out and, or they can go to TabithaWestbrook.com and you can kind of get back and forth between either one.
Thank you so much. It was so much fun to have you back.
Definitely.
It's so good to be here. I love the deep conversations that we have. And I just want to say, to folks who are like, wow, y'all went there. Yeah. And that's what we want to do. And I feel like we did it in a God honoring way, right? Yeah. Talking about sex doesn't have to be salacious. It can just be like sacred. And I hope that there are more conversations like this in the church.
Well, you're always welcome to.
Thank you so much, ladies. Y'all are the best.
Conversations.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Care.
You too.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Thrive by the Rising Muse. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need it and subscribe for more conversations that uplift, inform, and heal.
Follow us on social media. We are at the Rising Muse on all platforms. And remember, we're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, so help us out with that. Also remember that if you are in the middle of a mental health crisis, please dial 988. But if it's a loved one who's experiencing a mental health crisis, please dial 911 or take them to the nearest emergency.
If you think you're in a domestic violence relationship and you need help, please dial 800-799-7233 or text 887-888. And please make sure that you're in a safe place when you're reaching out for help.
Until next time, keep rising, healing, keep thriving, and don't forget to thrive. Have a blessed day.
Bye bye.